Shocking news, the infamous Dr. Craig Wright coming back for a live appearance. That's going to be on tomorrow. Break it down in this video right now. So looks like there's going to be a show tomorrow. It's going to be, let's see, the 11th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's at Sally Mayweather on X, at Sally Mayweather on X. That looks like where the show's going to be. And the infamous, famous, well-known, legendary, famous and infamous, I guess in both sides, Craig Wright, who hasn't made a public appearance since court that I know of, is going to be on the show. Now, okay, so let's break that down. You know, he kind of go back in time here a little bit, but I covered the trial here, the Satoshi trial. That was the identity trial, the sanctions motion, the contempt motion in detail, where the court found COPA versus Wright, Wright versus COPA, and the Bitcoin identity trial, the Bitcoin copyright, actually it was the Bitcoin naming rights. So it was the passing off case after that. So ultimately the COPA found the court found that Craig Wright, four things. He was not the person who wrote the Bitcoin white paper, was not the person that authored the Bitcoin system, was not the creator of the white paper, and one other thing. There was four things in the declaration. Then after that, the court found him to have to pay like some $5 or $10 million pounds, a huge amount of money. It's funny how right after that, during that same time period, now I covered this, there was the blockchain showed, the Bitcoin blockchain showed transactions going into a Canadian exchange that was picked up by withdrawn from Kraken, that paid off that, or like cashed out Bitcoin from the early Satoshi wallets, and it was exactly within a very small amount of dollar amounts for the same amount paid. So it was a Kraken bought exchange around 2012. They bought it, but it was Satoshi wallet addresses. They had been identified on a blog. I covered that on a video at some point. It's funny because that was the wallet addresses that paid the sanctions, we don't know if it paid the sanctions, but that wallet address moved, and it had moved in like 15 years, 12, 13 years, or some long time. It was withdrawn. It was the same amount. Very, very, very interesting. Then they quickly covered that up. It was like washed under the rug, put it away. Then he paid the sanctions, huge amount. And he made it clear in testimony that he did not, he had no funding from Calvin Air or anybody else. He was paying for everything himself on all of his litigation. So he made that very clear. So now he had the sanctions motion. He had the sanctions motion, which that was granted, almost found in contempt. We had a space in November of that year right after Thanksgiving. And on that, we had, during the trial, it was like after the trial, right? Sanctions were all happening, and people were really challenging Judge Miller at that time. And I was like 1,000 people that came together on some spaces that I had, almost 1,000 or more, and they signed an affidavit. They signed basically a petition to investigate the judicial bias from that court regarding the hearing. Now, that was then immediately taken down. Well, not immediately, like a couple days later. At 369 BSV, Scott, he did the petition. He put it up there, and we had it going viral. We had almost 1,000 people sign it in a couple days. Tufty the Cat came on my spaces. That was an attorney that I interviewed called David Pierce. And he came on and threatened Scott, and then wrote a actual written threat to Scott saying he was going to get arrested in California. We call that extortion. That's a crime. You cannot threaten someone with criminal matters. You can arrest the person. You can have the person charged by the DA. These are all things that can be done. But a regular man in California, and definitely not in the United States, cannot threaten criminal charges on somebody. Why? Because one, we don't have the ability to do it. I can't bring criminal charges against them. That's going to be the Attorney General, the District Attorney, and so I can't threaten. So they make it very specific in the law. It's called extortion. You can't do that for a reason. Threaten. Either you do it, right, or you just file the complaint, with the district attorney or whatever. So you can't threaten it. Or you can arrest somebody. We have citizens arrest, 837 the Penal Code in California. We can totally do that. And I've done it myself, arrested people before. It's a real thing. You arrest people. That's the best weapon that we ever have. I never am afraid to use it, with our phones in our pockets. I should do a show on how to do it. I mean, it's so easy. We got these weapons in our pockets now. Weapons meaning the phone with 911 on it. That's the best weapon you could ever have, than an actual weapon. Because as long as you're not in Oakland, if you're in a regular county and city in California, you're going to get some action. Not Oakland, of course. Oakland doesn't matter. You're helpless. You have to pretty much fight to the death on your own, bring your own weapons to the party. But here, any other city you're in, you call and they will come, 911. You can make the arrest. They'll bring in your person into custody. It's all on the record. And yeah, your guy might run away. Yeah, he could escape from arrest. People always say, what if he runs away? Well, yeah, it's called evading arrest. They can flag him down in a police car in a high-speed chase. I mean, yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah, people do flee from cops. But I mean, if he's going to follow the law, then he's under arrest. Somebody's under arrest, and he has to stay there, and then he's held not in custody yet, just arrest. Right? So then he can be taken into custody. So my point is that back to the case. That happened, and I was just on a rant there because of what happened with Tufte, David Pierce threatening Scott with criminal action, criminal charges. That out here is against the law. Shortly thereafter, Craig filed a case for, I keep looking away because it helps me just remember, a case for passing off. That's right. And it was thrown out. It was like for $1 trillion. And it was for the entire BTC market, passing off. Now, that passing off case was, it could have been done better, a lot of complaints. I was basically about the champagne wine passing off is what it was about. And so there was an old case back in the 1950s where Champagne Winery was making wine, and they basically had an issue about the wine not being, another entity tried to make wine just like them. And that entity could not. For some reason, I'm having a hard time. When I look in the camera, it's getting me so confused here. So anyway, I don't know. I've never had that happen. It's so weird. So the Champagne Winery, there was a group that was selling wine using their little brand. And because of that, this other guy sued, saying, hey, you're using my name. That's what Craig sued under. It was a BTC using the name Bitcoin, not about Satoshi. Then immediately the court filed motions against him. COPA filed a motion against him to hold him in contempt for saying that he was being Satoshi. The complaint never said that. It was explicitly saying, I'm not Satoshi. I'm just a miner. I'm an injured party. Not that I'm Satoshi. Of course, it was completely construed. And that's when we had the kangaroo court operation where COPA and Justice Miller got dressed up like clown suits. This is not a joke. This is actually serious. Got dressed up with the clowns and the makeup. And I know there's a meme I did about this, but it was a real thing. They really got dressed up and the makeup was dripping off his face, bleeding sweat. And they had Tufte and they had Artie Van Pelt and all these people in the courtroom. All these guys from BTC Core were there. They were just ready to take Craig Wright into jail. And Craig Wright ghosted him. He filed in the affidavit of disqualification for Judge Miller, signed by yours truly. And that was an extensive affidavit, going through all of the reasons why Judge Miller should be disqualified, including the almost 1,000 people that signed the Change.org petition that was taken down by Jack Dorsey. We believe so, because he was a decision maker at Change.org and also a COPA founding member. So that being said, it's a little bit of a recap on what happened in the legal side. Now, it all goes back to the Kleiman case, because preempted this, Craig Wright had a ton of freaking confidence coming into the hearings because he won Kleiman. And then you want to appeal on Climann. I mean, that's totally silenced. Get rid of that. Don't ever talk about Climann. That's the goal. Because in Climann, he was found to be the only controller over the origin of the Bitcoins, over the origins of Bitcoin. And that's the origins of Bitcoin were decided in Climann. That's from the very first sentence in the Climann case on appeal. It's about the original Satoshi coins, not the identity, the naming rights of the white paper. That was not decided. Totally. It wasn't. But it was inferred. It was implied. Okay? And I talked about this when the case was starting with COPA, and I said, I don't know how they're going to get around the Kleiman decision, because you got an implied decision here that he was the only person that created Bitcoin. How are they going to get around that? Never got brought up once in hearings. I don't know how that happened, dude. Kleiman was just, I get it. It's not controlling. It's U.S. So maybe they were just they didn't want to touch a U.S. case, I guess. But it seemed like it would at least be influential on the court. That being said, tomorrow looks like he's going to be in there. I don't know what they're going to talk about. Sally Mayweather on X. Let's do it. Probably do a show myself. Why not? Maybe Craig wants to do a show and we can get down to business. Talk about Bitcoin, the original design, and what's it all about. So check it out tomorrow on X. This is Gavin Mehl. Leave a comment. What do you think? You remember those shows? A lot more to come. I'll see you at the top.